Okay, welcome to Director 101. This might be a snoozer because it's about money, but this is so critical. We have got to be good at this little thing that we're about to talk about. Our goal here is to be able to take our emotions and our gut out of some of the staffing and budget decisions that we have to make. Now, there's plenty of gut and emotion that goes into those things, but if there's any way that I could eliminate some of that so that I would know the decision that I should make based on like real numbers, that's what should happen. First of all, we need a little bit of vocabulary so that we understand what's going on. What is the $1 bill of camp work? And that is what we're going to call our camper day. Our camper day is made up of 3 meals and 1 night. In essence, it's 24 hours of when a camper is on your property. They might have started on one day at dinner and then gone until lunch the next day, and they might have been on your property for 2 days, and insurance might make you count that as 2 days, but in essence, they're really only there for 1 camper day. One of the things that we're going to figure out is what is our camper day number. So you take the number of campers that we have. Let's say that we have 50 campers, and we take the number of days that they are on the property, and let's say a standard camp for us would be a Thursday dinner through a Saturday breakfast. Well, I'm just kind of doing the math there. I'm figuring out how many meals they have. So Thursday dinner, and then breakfast, lunch, dinner on Friday, and then breakfast there. So I've got 5 right there, and then 2 nights. So I've got 6, and then number 7. So that is 7 parts, or 1 3/4 days, 1.75 days is what they were here for. So 50 campers times 1.75, I did not make it easy on myself here on the math, is going to be what, 87.5? So this equals 87.5 camper days. The other thing that I'm going to have to figure out, the term FTE, that is short for full-time equivalent. Now, this can be a bear to figure out. Your full-time equivalent is the number of people that are working full-time for you. If you've got part-time people, you're going to have to figure out how to count them in your equation here. So for us, we have full-time, counts as 1. We have 3/4 time, obviously, counts as 3/4, and half-time. That's the way that those pieces work, and every staff member has one of those numbers assigned to them. We have some other non-business income that we may receive that doesn't have to do with camping. We take out those employees, but we are trying to figure out on our property the people that are involved in all the camp work, that make it all happen, operations and program, a total full-time equivalent. So again, in our organization, we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 22 is our full-time equivalent. That's the vocabulary part of this. Now, let's look at a couple of different things that we want to kind of work through that help us put stakes in the ground, that help us understand where we fit. Okay, so first of all is our camper day to staff full-time equivalent ratio. Oh, I know that's like, man, that's a lot of words. What exactly is going on here? So for us, it is 750 to 1. Now that is a low ratio. Most folks are going to be somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 to 1. What exactly does that mean? That means for every 1 staff member that I have 750 camper days apply to that. So in other words, if I had a total number of, say, 2,250 camper days, that means that I should have a staff number of 3. Now, that 3 may be made up of 1, 2 halves, and another single. It may be 4 people that make up that 3, but my full-time equivalent If I'm going to be 1 to 750, would be that number right there. Now, what is valuable about this? Because when you are shrinking and growing, there will be a time in every part of your year where you'll sit there and you'll be like, oh man, we need more staff. There's always a weekend where you're like, oh, I could definitely use more staff. You're at the top end of your capacity. But if you decide at that moment that we need more staff, and you don't have the way to pay for that, it would be easy to suddenly add staff, and you're not really prepared for it. Or the budget is looking really good and you're getting a lot more income, and we've had a lot of campers, and if we could just, do a ratio a little bit higher, boy, we can make more money here. It's a little bit easier to work on the budgets, all that sort of stuff. And you basically burn up your staff because you didn't add staff as you were growing. What I love about coming up with a ratio right here is that I know now where I'm at historically in this number. Historically, like, am I below ratio, above ratio? Where am I at? Now, in the last year, our staff, or our camper days, have grown immensely. And it's just been like almost every 6 months that we've had to rework this number to figure out, do I need to add somebody? And it's hard too when you're shrinking to say, no, I need to, like, it's not my decision to cut our staff, but it's just what's happening in terms of the numbers, that this is what we're going to need to do. Now, let's go through another one that is important. Once you figure out your camper days to full-time equivalent ratio, you also need to come up with your program to operations ratio. In other words, if I have 5 staff members, how many of those are operations and how many of those are program? So this not only tells me that I need to add staff member, but which team do I need to add that person to? So again, for us, we are a 1 program to every 4 operations. Now, I don't know what your number will be. I don't know how that will work. And some of us will have a small enough staff team that I only work half-time on program. The other half I do other things. But that means for every 5 people I add on our team, 1 of them is working in program. And that really helps me make sure that I keep that program team in the right spot, that I keep operations in the right spot, because both of those can be a squeaky wheel. I don't know what your team is like, but I can't just go with a gut emotional decision on this. I've got to know exactly what the ratio is going to be. The other thing that this really helps me do is figure out a payroll percentage. Now, I'm just going to use general terms here. Usually you're looking between a 40 and 45% payroll percentage of your overall income. So let's say that your income was $100,000. If you were at 40%, if your payroll percentage was at 40%, then it would be okay to spend $40,000 on a staff member. This is how you figure out how your benefits are going to go, what you can afford to do with that, how much you're going to cost for camp. So people are always, now how do you figure out your pricing? How do you figure out what that is? Here's a really cool thing that you do. Some of this is related to camper days as well. So the way we're going to budget on camper days is we're going to give several budgets a dollars per or cents per camper day. So hospitality, food, program, and replacement. These all get money according to how many camper days we have. That means if we have more camper days, they automatically get the increase. They get it per camper day. It's not just a static number. That means if we have less camper days, they get less. But that would make sense because it's hospitality, food, program, replacement. These are the areas that are being used the most by the camper, and therefore when the camper's here, they should be paid for it. Let me just give you numbers that we're using here in 2022. I know these numbers are going to change as time goes on and that sort of thing, but even so you can put together percentages. For us, hospitality is somewhere around $1.25. Food is somewhere around $11.50 just for the raw cost of the food, not the labor cost that goes with it. Program is somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 a camper day, and replacement is somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.50 per camper day. Now you add all of that up, and what are we at? We're up over $18 that we are spending on just when a camper arrives. This money automatically goes to each of these budgets to do these things. Now, let's now say that our camper day, I know I'm doing the math here and some of you are zoning out on me, but if you're saying that your payroll percentage is actually going to be 40%, and you are at a 1 to 1,000 range. Again, our $100,000, you've got 40,000 there in expenses for that staff member. But we divide that 40,000, we divide it by your 1,000 to 1 ratio right here. And what's going to happen is that I realize that, so I divide that by 1,000. Now I know that that's $40. So each camper day has got $18 in these variable costs right here, and it's got a staff cost of $40 per day. If I charge anything less than $58 per day for that camper, I am losing money on every camper that arrives. I cannot afford to get anything less than $58 per day. Now, if they're there 5 days in summer, that's what, a $290 camp. And sometimes we're like, oh man, that's did I do the math right on this? 40, yeah, $290 for camp. And that's just based on the staff cost plus the camper day cost. That doesn't even go to all of your fixed costs that are there. We didn't even cover insurance. We didn't cover the electric bill. We didn't cover all of those sort of things. But this is how you figure out what you've got into each price. So what we work at doing is you can lower these numbers if you want to try to. You can lower these staffing numbers if you're able to. But at some point, you'll say, this is how I can get staff at this amount of work for each staff member, at this amount of cost in the payroll. This is what we're doing per camper day, and it's going to get you really close to the number that it can't be any less than that. So it kind of takes all the mystery out of how I should do it. Now, if I were going to sit down and figure out, I could sit down with the guys, kind of his end of year numbers, and be able to figure out what these various costs are. I've just used illustrative numbers to help me put these things together. But if you'll go through the work of figuring out your camper days, figuring out your camper day ratio, figuring out your full-time equivalent, and figuring out what you spend per camper day on these different items, your history will get you to a spot that tells you what you should charge for a camp. And then as certain parts of it go up or down, this is what was really helpful for me, is that I was able to realize, oh, I'm out of sorts on my ratio. We were like 886. So we were way above our 750 to 1. That means I need to add more staff. That means I'm going to add more payroll expenses. But because the campers are paying at the same rate, we know we'll be able to cover that. And so it takes the gut work, the emotion work out of adding and subtracting staff. I hope that was clear. I hope that that these things, that you might have to go back and relook at it. But if you can figure out just these 3 or 4 numbers, it'll be a real help to you as you figure out how to budget and how to staff at your camp.